Well, what I've got to do right now, I have a bunch of these little signs I got to finish for Christmas. There's more than this around, but some of them are hid because they're for people that might show up over here. But I don't really have a workbench to work on because I'm using this to build this welding table a little at a time that I haven't finished. But right now, see, I've got these pieces of scrap 1/4 inch. I need to cut up to make the gussets, that go to stiffen the table. Kind of like this table is built. You've got some stiffeners that go in here. So without going into a lot of detail, there was a guy on the TruCut group, Facebook group, that was talking about how we really need a manual to operate these machines, and that's true. I've always thought that, and I've had several guys I've talked to in the last year or two on these tables that said the same thing, and it was frustrating to guys that first buy one of these tables, or any kind of table as far as that goes, and you don't really know exactly where to start, or you kind of have the manual that tells you how to set the machine up and calibrate it and some of those things, but as far as bringing some work to the table and being able to cut it, there's really not any information for dummies on that. And I'm pretty dumb myself. I'm still dumb. I don't use this machine very often because I run an industrial machine at work, and I'm not here doing this full time. So I thought we might just fire this thing up and see if we can figure out how to operate this. And if there's anything here that'll help someone else, that's great. Normally when your air is off, you can move this thing. Let me set this. I wished I didn't have this in my hand right now. This is a GoPro. That's something else I saw people discussing, what kind of cameras work well. And I know Gary Ramsey had talked about that GoPros are terrible cameras and they don't work good inside because it's too dark. Well, if your shop is lit up good like mine is, I believe you'll see that you got to think about that, and there's settings in the camera, I'm sure, for different lighting, but overall, yeah, a GoPro it doesn't zoom. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's a fairly cheap option just for shooting quick video. So the first step, I was going to move this table down. When the air is off, you can move this, of course. So first thing is your top switch is your actual control in here. So fire that up, and we'll turn the air on. I've already got the air in the shot. I just don't have the valve on here. You need a good dryer system. If you can see in this corner, something else I've seen discussed to death on some of these groups is, you can see over there. See, I have a Harbor Freight dryer. That thing works great. There is no. All right, sorry for that interruption. My camera card got full on me, so let's back up and try to remember where we were at. Just to power the machine on, you can have your PC on first. You can leave it on if you want. That's up to you. If you use the machine a lot, it doesn't really hurt to leave it on. I even leave mine on online so it can get updates and things that it needs. That's not recommended by most people, including the owner, Ross Carlisle, who unfortunately today they're going out of business and having their liquidation auction there in Jackson, Tennessee. That's sad to see. Sad for them and sad for all of us owners that bought into this brand of machine with a company that went out of business. That's not good. Kind of makes you nervous in a way, but we'll learn how to cope with that. So anyway, if this is something anybody wants to watch, I'm pretty low level at using this stuff like some of the newest people are there. Hopefully I know a little bit more than some that I can help. Be glad to help if I can. But this is an XT 4x8 bought in or delivered to me in September of 2018, and honestly it's been working pretty well. I'm fairly satisfied with it. It is what it is in the price range, and I'm completely satisfied at the price range. I know there's better machines out there, and I would never say there's not, and there's also a lot worse machines, and the price shows that. If you know, Right CNC and the Langmeyer, or some of those are lower level, entry level machines, and the price shows that. Anyway, we won't discuss that right now. That's debated constantly on different forums, and that's not for me to worry about right now. I was telling you this, Ross had told me to get one of these little Harbor Freight air dryers, and it does work very well. I've seen people mouthing and saying those are junk and don't work well. They work extremely well. They're about $400, I think. I also put this dryer up here before that has the desiccant. These are sold on Amazon. If you look for one that looks just like that on Amazon, they're really good too. They have the regulator and a 3-stage filter system with the desiccant in the end of it. I was having to change that desiccant about once a week when I first had that, and I didn't have my dryer over here. And I don't have a lot of air in my water in my air system normally, but I was getting that desiccant was getting wet, so I never have to change it now. I do occasionally, but I don't need to. It doesn't ever get any water. I've never got a drop of water. And you can also purge these occasionally. You should notice that I hadn't done that in a long time. There's not a drop of water come out of any of that, so because it's all going through that refrigerated dryer first. So that is fairly important to have that. Well, anyway, those two switches down there, which Ross told me that they were supposed to have labels on them when they came out, but these did not, so I put some labels on them. PC's the bottom one, and the CNC controls and everything else is on the top of them. Just fire up your PC and get it on first, and when you're ready to do some work, turn on your CNC control, which I already have. Next off, like I was showing you, I need to do some 1/4 inch. I need to cut some 1/4 inch flat strap. So I don't believe that I've made any drawings on it. You could go and make some drawings on that in whatever CAD software you want to use, but I don't think I've done that. Excuse me, I've got this cold. I just made me a little list of some things I need. So I think, and I hadn't done this in a long time, that's what I'm trying to show, how to kind of do this stuff if you've never used one of these machines very much, or even if you do and like me don't use it very often. The first thing you want to open up, if you're just going, if you already have your file set or whatever your case, if not, you can go into Sheet Cam or Cut 2D, whatever you want to do. And I have that on my other computer as well. I just have those on here, but I don't use this computer for everyday use. It's not recommended to use this little computer for anything other than using your machine. So this one that says TruCut CNC, that's your Mach 4. So we'll open that up. And I'm not sure how well you're seeing this. I hope you can see it well enough. So let's just go into, when it comes up it says TruCut, all that, just push OK. I know this is real low level stuff here. I'm just showing you the first few things to do when you turn your machine on if you're new to this. I'm sure most of you are beyond this. It's TruCut hasn't built machines now for, I don't think, for a few months anyway. Okay, once that opens up, it'll have this enable flashing, so the machine ain't going to do anything until you enable that. So just push enable down here. Now you can go to jog. See all these tabs right here at the top of this. You can push jog and then make sure you're clear on your machine, and then you can, apparently I have the air off. There's a valve on the side of your machine. I may have clicked it off. Like I was showing you earlier, you can move this gantry around with the air off, or with this valve here, you can, okay, when you pull that in, see, now you're locked in. Just make sure all your rollers are riding nice on your rail. Occasionally them things want to jump around on you, and that's probably because maybe your machine's not set up real level, or something's a little out of whack. Just make sure all your rollers are rolling right. Mine seem to be okay lately. All right, now you can push the jog on the X. That's going to be your longest travel, is the X. So you can roll that around wherever you want to. And then, of course, your Z, just go ahead and raise the Z on up pretty high to get it out of the way. And, well, you can't see any of that, but it's moving. So, what I was telling you is we need to make some cuts. There's a something in here called Shape Wizard right here at the top. I've used this before, but it's been a good while. Again, I don't know how well you can see this. Excuse me, and I'll move you a little closer here. I don't have a good program on this. I need to put a screen recorder on this, I guess, so that I could show you closer. But in Shape Wizard, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're looking for different shapes. So in this case, remember, I want to make some flat bar in 1/4 inch, 2 inches wide. So we'll just find a rectangle like that. So on your height, which is going to be the Y travel, you know, that's just the way the machine is laid out. Your X is going to be long ways, and your Y is going to be up and down, and all of that is referenced from this lower left corner, at least the way mine is set up. So you're going to be at 0, 0, and your Y positive is going to go up, and your X positive is going to go to your right. Okay, so we'll put in the height right here. Just put 2 for 2 inches. Our width, W there. I've got a list here where I need some 40-inch. I'll just make one on this. I think you can just do one at a time, whereas if you drew them, you could do. So let's just put 40 inches right there, and nothing fancy about that. So the next thing, that there's nothing to tell you this that I know of, and it might be in the upper. You have to click Run Part right down here. See right here. If you click that, I believe that built the G code for that now. So now if you go back over here and push Program Run, or you can look at your Hypertherm Cut Charts in here too. That's just kind of like looking in your book. You're going to run that. I'm going to run 45 amps in 1/4 inch. So right there is saying that's tool 27, 1/4 inch steel, 45 amps. Pierce height is at 0.15. It's 150 thousandths. And your cut height is going to be at 60 thousandths. Pierce delay is at 0.6 seconds. Cut speed is a maximum of 48 inches a minute, theoretically, and your torch height control volts is 137, and that's all kind of a starting point. And if you'll notice, right here is your torch height control. You have to turn that on every time when you first turn your machine on. Just push on, which I've already done. They're saying 137 volts. You can also pull your book out, but in that case we need to push this plus sign right here and run that on up. I probably would run that up above what it says, so you make sure you're not going to drag. So to the best of my memory, 140 volts is pretty safe for running that. I would always go a couple, 2 or 3 volts above that, and when you get to where you're running and it looks pretty good, you can always back that down a little bit. But on just flat bar cuts, it's not going to hurt it to be a little bit higher. Okay, so our torch height control is set. Now, at this point, you've already went through your Mach manual. You need to read the Mach manual, and it's on the screen. Let's go back and push program run here, because see that G code it put in here? That's because we pushed that run part there earlier. So, and that's on the screen there. Now, to get this machine, this is something that was, when I was new to this, I didn't find anything that told me how to do any of this. I understand some of the questions saying we need a user's manual for this, and we really do. So let me kind of get the camera set different, and let me show you what I do as the first step to running a new part on the machine here. And we could talk about a lot of this other stuff. Any questions that you have, I'm more than willing to help if I can. Most of this is something you can probably figure out. I'll just show you up here. There's also a trace wizard. You can go through this and trace a part out on the table, and it basically draws a CAD drawing of that it's a little bit difficult to figure that out, but you can do that by playing around in there. I have done that before. And then you've got machine diagnostics. You can look in here at some things, and you don't want to be changing a lot of stuff in some of this if you don't know what you're doing. But you can look at some inputs and different things in here. That's something to play with when you have time and kind of study through there and make sense of some of that. It's not normally anything you need to do. But you're in the program run screen most of the time, and then when you push, this is the jog screen, remember. I'll show you in a minute. If you go up here to outputs, see that laser pointer? You can turn your laser on right there, and that's what we'll do next. I'll get back with you in just a minute on that. All right, once you get some material on here, and this is just some scrap pieces of 1/4 inch. The first step, and you really should build a template for your machine to get this running true with the x-axis. When I was running this thing a lot more often, I knew about what I used to measure, but one end of this table is something like a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch or something different from the other, and I don't remember right now. I think this end is a little bit longer, but just to start with, you can set these at pretty close to the same on each end. Let's see, that's 3.5 from there. And in the middle, there's a little bit of a bow here where that's welded, so don't, just mainly measure if you can from one end to the other. Get those pretty close. All right, we're pretty close now. That's where I was going to show you when you turn that laser on. In your output screen, just turn the laser pointer on. Go back into your jog. I know you can't see the screen. Just listen to what I'm telling you and look at your screen. Go to the jog. Now bring your y-axis over. I don't know how well you can see that far off, but I'll bring it to you in a minute. Line up your laser. Now you can set this laser offset, but Ross always said don't depend on that because he don't believe that it's all that accurate if things move around. And I've used it before. You can get screwed up that way. I don't use that very often. It's handy when you want to, but if you bring your z-axis down here to a reasonable, safe level, but get your laser lined up, eyeball that. I usually leave that dot about a 1/16 over in the material, just guesstimating. And then I'll just run it from one end to the other and see if I'm staying lined up all the way. You may have to do that 2 or 3 times. That's why when you get that lined up, if you had made yourself a wooden block or something, you could set a wooden block up in there and every time just pull it to it and then still probably shoot it down there, but it'd be a little quicker. I've never really done that. I just do this. See, I had to pull that in just a little bit there. So I'm right on the edge. You see that laser there? I'm trying to look in this little, get you a little bit closer. You see the laser point is lined up on the edge of the material. Sorry if I'm going too slow for you. This is just, honestly, I've had some real beginners out there ask me questions like this that I, believe it or not, didn't know some of this stuff. So I'm just showing little things that I've learned on my own basically doing this stuff. There's probably a million ways to do this. This is just how I've always lined up on material. You put a new sheet of material on, do this. As long as nothing gets moved, you're good. And we are really close. Sometimes you need to bump it a time or two. Real close. It depends on how much margin of room you have around here, on how accurate you even need to be doing that. But in this case, I do have a good little bit of room around it, I think. But after you're done, the main reason I like to be real straight is after you're done cutting something, if you want to take the torch and cut it off square and get the scrap piece off the table to use later, well, that way when you do cut it off square, then everything is square. It's not crooked and anything else. You can depend on it being square next time you use it. So let's come back down and sweep this one more time. This takes a few minutes and it almost feels like a waste of time sometimes doing this, but especially when you're showing and talking, that doesn't take a moment. Anyway, we're lined up pretty true now. We're on the edge all the way up and down this piece of material. So now, like I was telling you, it's unclear in any books I've looked at on this machine on how you get started on this cut. I'll show you how to do it, and I believe I had to call Ross or Cindy to get them to tell me this originally, because I couldn't believe there was nothing to tell you really how to get set your zeros so the machine knows where to start cutting from. Believe it or not, that's not in any book that I've ever seen on this machine. So let's move back over here. Let's see if we can make this cut. I'll also show you. See, don't forget, there's a lot of things you got to remember when you do this, and I'm bad about it. I had the hand torch on earlier cutting some scrap up, so I need to plug my machine torch back in right here. Turn on this is a Hypertherm 45 XP, and it's good for cutting up to 3/8 material real well, and it will cut 1/2 inch fairly decent. I've cut 3/4 before, but it's not all that great. This is one of the parts that I've cut with this. It will cut it. This may be one I brought from work that I cut, but it'll leave quite a bit of taper on 3/4. And you can only do it at about 5 inches a minute or something, so it's not really a good idea. This thing really good up to 1/4 inch real good. And if you want to go to 3/8, that's okay. Okay. Now, oh yeah, we was going to find out, what do you do next? Okay. We put our G-code in, remember, with the Shape Wizard on this. And I would say using Shape Wizard is the best way to get acquainted with your machine to start with. Just cutting some little shapes. And there's some stars and all kinds of shapes in there that you can play around with and get used to things. So, see, there's our G-code. It's in this list right here. And MDI is manual data input, I think. And I guess you could go in there and edit this G-code if you knew what any of that meant. I'm not very good at knowing what that stuff means. I could figure it out, and I think in the Mach manual it tells you what some of that is, but we don't need to know that to run this machine really. So we're lined up. Let's get you over here. I'm lined up with the laser now, but I'm not lined up with the torch. So I turned on the torch. That's something else. I forgot to tell you, I've got fine cut consumables in the torch, and that's not what we want to use on 1/4 inch here. So let me go get some consumables out, and I'll show you before we even get started here how to do that. Okay, changing your consumables is pretty easy to do on this type of torch. And you do need to be using a machine torch. I'm sure it's probably what you have. I'm just saying it's silly to try to. Anyway, just take your Hypertherm manual that came with your plasma cutter, which is 45 XP, 65, and 85. I'm pretty sure you use the same consumables up to 45 amps. That's going to be your most common, 45 amps. So just thumb over to that page. You can buy your consumables online if you need to. Harris is a decent company. And your welding supply and stuff like that. There's usually this little chart that comes with it too that'll show you. There's been a lot of talk about different consumables, but anyway, until you get familiar with all this, I'm not saying you're not familiar. I'm probably, a lot of people are more familiar than I am, but this, just go to the page. Here's your mild steel 45 amp. Tells you what shield, and then you use that piece. I forgot what you call that right now. Here's your nozzle and electrode, and your good grief, I can't think. Anyway, the only pieces you normally change out of those three pieces, and I've got them laying here. So to change that, it's as easy as, let me get you a little closer in case you can't see this very well. This is not hard to do. I shouldn't even waste time showing this, but all you do is unscrew this whole thing. Make sure that part stays in there. You're going to dump out, this is your fine cut. The electrode's the same, so I just usually keep my electrodes and nozzles, and I kind of use them again if they're not wore out. And that's your, so you can put this type of shield, which in that book is at 228.17. Stick that on there. And then your 229.41 nozzle. And your electrode is the 228.42. And then just stick them right back on here. There's an O-ring there. I usually just take a little bit of water off the table here and just kind of wipe that on the O-ring so it's not dry or something like that. And just screw it on there lightly by hand. Don't try to force that real tight. Just feel it when it stops, and that's good enough right there. Okay, so we've changed consumables. Now let's get back to what we were about to do. So now we want to line the torch tip up with the pretty close to the edge of the material that is good. I have a little extra material here, so I'm not going to try to use every inch of it. Sometimes you need to use every little part of it, but we're just going to jog the torch back here. Just move the Z down. We're not using the laser anymore, so probably best to just turn the laser back off and just kind of eyeball that. You can change the increments on the jog mode right next to the jog mode if you need to for fine little movements, but so I'll just jog it down here to where it's safely in the good material. And I think I have plenty of material there, so what I was wanting is some 2-inch flat bar, and I've got close to 6 inches here. I can't see that. A little over 5 3/4. So what we'll do is I like to be fairly close to the edge there. So that's probably about right. Okay. Now, I don't remember if I told you, but before you change your consumables out like I did, be sure your plasma cutter is off. Turn your Hypertherm unit off. Now I'm going to turn it back on. Okay, and make sure air pressure's on and all that. So now, since I have the torch right here where I want to start that at my 0 spot, I'll back you up here now and let you see the screen here. Sorry for all the movements. I'm just trying to be sure you can follow along here with what I'm doing. This is real elementary stuff, I realize. Sorry that if you already know all this, don't. This video is not for you. This is for somebody that's just starting out and doesn't really know the first steps to do this, like I believe we all were at some point in the game, wishing that someone would show us this stuff. Okay, what I was showing you earlier is you can turn this jog mode like I was doing. You push this button, see it says continuous, push it again, it goes incremental, and you can change these increment jog steps to, I've got mine set to 50 thousandths and 25 thousandths, 10 thousandths, and up to 1 inch. I usually use the 100 thousandths jog until I get to really needing to fine tune, but otherwise put it on continuous and it just moves pretty fast. Okay, so now, like I said, we got the torch where we want it. See all these numbers on the DRO? I don't know if you can see up there. They're all goofy numbers. We want those to be zeros before we start. Our G code is entered. You remember where we get all that set. So right here where it says 0 all, just push that because our torch is right where we want to start. And see all them numbers went to 0. Now that's going to tell the machine that's where we're going to start this cut. So it's just going to pierce right there, and it's going to go clockwise around that and cut that out. That, I believe that was 40 inches by 2 inches. And so make sure you're on normal run. If you don't know that you don't trust it to start and work good, also make sure this contact, but a lot of people have this contact light coming on. That's where it touches off. And if you ever have an error out on something and it doesn't, just disable and enable this back. That kind of resets everything here where it'll, you know, if it had an error, sometimes it doesn't want to start right back where you want to. Make sure you're zeroed. Okay, so we're ready to go. And at this point, all I've got to do is push cycle start, and this thing's going to go. And it's going to show this, the feed rate here is awfully fast. I don't know why. Oh, I know what we didn't do. We better go back and talk about this. See, I hadn't done this in a while. Like I said, let's go back into Shape Wizard because that's not going to be right. You need to go to these Hypertherm Cut Charts and pick the one that you want. See if I can remember how to do this. It's on 45 amp. There's 1/4 inch, and that's tool number 27. See where it says process 27 right here? Make sure you type that number in there, or make sure it's there, and push update process right there. Now we need to go, since we've done that, now go in here and push run part. See there? I didn't do that earlier. I forgot about that. I'd forgotten all about that. Now when we push program run, that put the G code in here. And if you'll notice over here now, our feed rate's at 34. And that's because these things are set so when it pulls a file in, it's pulling that speed reduction at 70%. I'm pretty sure we could run that faster than 34. And anytime you want to change that number, you can change that number right there. Change your feed rate. It has our pierce delay in there, right? But if you want this to change, you can change this number to 70, 75, 80, whatever you want to. Or on a simple cut like this, I would just probably go in here and put, I don't know, let's change that to 40 inches a minute. I think it said 48 was our maximum. We can change that to 40. And then have this in run. I usually put crash sensing on. That kind of protects it. If it, in case of a crash, it'll stop the machine there. So anyway, we're ready to go. This is just our, let's just pretend this is our first cut ever. and we're going to make a cut. So at this point we're just going to push cycle start, and let's just move this. Let me move this out of the way so you can see. Try to do this without shaking you around too much. See, I don't know if this is going to be successful or not. We'll try it. Try to get down here. Maybe it won't bump you. It's kind of hard to film while you're doing this, you know. So I'm just going to hit cycle start and let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. Torch height controls on and all that, like we already set at 140. Yeah. There's a lot more ways of doing this kind of thing. You can nest a bunch of these on something and do it that way. But anyway, if anybody has any interest or any questions on this, or even straighten me out on something, I guess if you want to, this is just, I don't use this Shape Wizard very often. I was just showing you that's usually the first step you can do when you buy a machine and start playing around with this. This Mach 4 screen is really all we've been in here today. So I don't know, let me know if you want to continue this little series, and we can you know, kind of like make a making a written manual on how to use this machine. We can probably take these videos and pretty easily go step by step from the video on making a little operator's manual for how to use it.